This is the USNS Maury, and this is the line handler's view of how we take the ship alongside in Belfast Harbour. To begin with, the line handlers at the forward and aft end of the ship give the pilot and the captain readouts on how far away they are from a given landmark. In this case we were using bollard number 9. The plan was that bollard number 9 would come in line with the stern of the ship, and that's how they were going to position the ship.
Maury, so that's about 1 metre to the stern and number 9 over.
1 metre, okay,
Once roughly in position, the captain and the pilot can then use the ship's bow and stern thrusters, along with the tugboat if one is being utilised, to push the ship sideways, across the water so that it rests onto the quay.
Okay, thank you.
This circle with the black propeller in it indicates the position of the stern thruster on this ship. This allows anyone working around the ship to know where the wash is going to come away from the stern thruster, and it also means that you're able to avoid that area if you plan on falling in, so that you don't get chopped up by the propeller inside it.
What is that?
This is just me communicating with the crew to make sure that I put the lines in the right place, because there's nothing worse than putting them in the wrong place and then having to lift them all back off again and move them. Although granted, these lines were very light, so that probably wouldn't have been too much of a problem if it did happen. Once we're close enough alongside, the crew can then pass me, in this case a very short heaving line, attached to the 2 spring lines. 2 spring lines we take first, and that stops the forward and backward movement of the ship. At this point, I should have realised that the heaving line was tied directly through the eye of the mooring line, instead of onto the tail end of the rope like I thought it was. But I didn't, and we had to deal with that a little bit later on, as you'll see.
Oh, sake.
Now that I'd wasted enough time doing that, I could go back down to the end of the ship, pass the heaving line up to them, although we were that close alongside and it was such a small ship that they could literally just hand the eyes to me.
Thank you. Ready for number 9?
No, it's sitting right here.
This one?
Yep.
Yeah.
We're going to do 2 stern lines.
2 stern lines, that's grand, yeah. That one there or to there?
We're going to take one of the eyes back.
Yeah. Any preference which one? No.
As much planning as the crew and the pilots do, sometimes things just change in the moment, so the crew decided they were going to just change the layout of where the ropes are going to be coming from. It wasn't too big of an issue, we just had to throw one line back and then we took a different one from the other side of the ship. Quick wave to the pilot boat crew.
Yep, got it. Dip the eye.
The crew on the ship wanted the eye dipped. This basically means taking the end of the second rope and putting it through the eye of the first rope and then onto the bollard, and it means you can take the first one off without untying the second one that you've put on. Just makes it handier if you need to move one line without moving the other line. Once she was done with then, the Eileen McLaughlin tugboat was able to be let go from the front of the ship, and then she headed back to her dock, and then she was able to relax there for the rest of the day.
Several days later.
Same tugboat as on arrival, the Eileen McLaughlin, comes in underneath the port bow of the ship. The ship's crew then pass down a heaving line so that Eddie on the tug can pass up the tug's line to the ship, where they can then pull it on, put it over their block. They always use the line from the tug, that way the tug crew knows the condition of the line, they know the strength of the line. It also means they can control the line in and out a lot more than if it was a line coming from the ship that they just had a fixed end of. Eddie, the deckhand on the tug, then gives the skipper the signal all fast, which is the two arms coming up crossed. That way the skipper knows to then let the ship know that they're all fast and ready to work. Once they're ready then, the ship can slack off their lines. I can take them off the bollard, toss them into the water, and then the ship crew can pull them back up on board.
I think went to the front end and then about 6 meters inside before they got the bit.
For whatever reason, due to the layout of the forward mooring station on this ship, they had to take quite a lot of the tow line in before they could reach the block that it was going on to. So the tugboat had to slightly reconfigure its tow line just so that they had a longer line leading up to the ship. It just means that the tug can pull at a better angle rather than a very, very steep angle like it currently had.
Ready when you're up.
On this ship, the crew are bringing the ropes on board by hand, so if they're wet, they're a lot heavier and they're also just not as nice to work with. So for the ones that are going to bollards closer to where they're coming from on the ship, I kind of carry them down the quay so that they don't dip into the water and they don't get soaked and be annoying for the crew to work with. Just makes it a wee bit nicer pulling them back on board. Once all the mooring lines are back on board, the tug can start to pull the ship away from the quay. So it's just pulling it straight out, directly out into the centre of the channel, just to kind of start a turn. You can see that now that the tow line has been reconfigured to a longer one, the ship is being pulled at a much more gentle angle. It's not coming straight down onto the tugboat. It's kind of coming out at a nice, maybe like 30-40 degrees. It's just a lot nicer sort of pulling direction. As the tugboat does all the work up forward, pulling the ship round, the captain and pilot need to make sure that they obviously don't hit the quay as the back swings. So they're just constantly adjusting just to keep a good bit of distance away from the quay so that they can complete the swing without hitting it. So just before we finish the video, I'll just give you a quick few facts on the ship, because who doesn't love a few ship facts? So she is a Pathfinder class oceanographic survey ship, and she is operated by the Military Sealift Command of the United States Navy. 108 metres long and 18 metres wide, and she displaces just over 4,700 gross tonnes. On board she takes 28 civilian crew members, and then has extra space then for 27 sort of scientific members, so like the geographers and oceanographers and stuff like that are coming on board for specific tasks related to whatever area they're surveying. Pretty cool feature it has is a 300 square foot moon pool, and what a moon pool is basically a large square cut out in the middle of the hull, and it basically allows for devices like ROVs and sort of towable survey equipment to be launched in even challenging weather. Obviously there's still a cut-off, but it doesn't have the risk of having the ROV being pushed up against the side of the ship by a big wave, because it's nice and sheltered in the middle of the ship, and it means they have a lot more access to the ocean through all types of weather conditions. Now, despite the name on the back of the ship being Maury, that is actually no longer its name. On International Women's Day 2023, the ship was renamed after the late Marie Tharp. Now, Tharp was a very influential geologist and oceanographer active in the mid-20th century. Her work in the 50s on the team of people that carried out the first mapping of the Atlantic seabed led to the discovery of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Now, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge is one of the largest mountain ranges in the entire world. However, it is entirely underwater. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge is formed as the Eurasia Plate and the North American Plate, which both meet in the middle of the Atlantic, pull apart. As they do this, magma is released from the mantle up through the plate, which cools, creating new rock on the surface and causes the ridge to be formed. This new rock also fills in the gap left by the plates pulling apart, which means that the Atlantic is actually growing by about 30 millimeters each year. Despite the 1950s mappings carried out by Tharp being the first hard evidence of the existence of the ridge, it had been theorized up to 100 years previous, based on surveys carried out on board the USS Dolphin in 1853. These surveys were overseen by Commander and Oceanographer Matthew Fontaine Maury. Maury was the original namesake of the vessel from its construction until 2023, when it was renamed the Marie Tharp. I think it's a very cool and interesting link that the two namesakes of the ship have, both being so influential in making such a groundbreaking discovery in the field of plate tectonic theory and oceanography. It's a very cool link for the ship to have as well, for to be sailing under the names of two very influential people in the area of science that it continues to work in to this day.